Hi, my name is Marc Emery. I'm publisher of Cannabis Culture magazine. I'm leader of the BC Marijuana Party, and I will tell you, I have not done a lot of political work on behalf of the BC Marijuana Party because I'm swamped these days editing Cannabis Culture magazine, organizing young people into the United States election November 7th, and of course, there's many jobs and responsibilities here at the BCMP building. And so I would like to say that I'm glad to have a show, I'm glad to be back to talk to you, and I'm here to talk about politics in the manner of the leader of the BC Marijuana Party. Mark Foley's disgrace as a Republican congressman from Florida, sending emails to pages and carrying on suggestive and sexual relationships through email, while not the greatest crime of all, is certainly another glaring example of people in positions of power having contempt for both their responsibility to the people, the trust they have given to them by the people, and the very fact that they are in a position of absolute power, really. These are princes of the United States, princes of the Congress, and they get away with such terrible, terrible things. And I want to tell you that we have a big crisis here in British Columbia. We have the police involved in all sorts of molestations of Native girls, murders of people unwarranted throughout this province. We have scandal and we have abuse of authority by our police throughout this province. I myself know this because the Vancouver police here, in an act probably not so uncommon really, handed over the file they did on me. When they couldn't get any charges against me by the Crown Attorney, they handed it over to the DEA. And unfortunately, Canadian police from the top, from the RCMP Commissioner, the Chief of Police, who's implicated in sending a man to torture, Mahar Arar, to torture in Syria on absolutely no evidence whatsoever and in complete complicity to the FBI and the United States federal government, as well as the Canadian National Police Service. And I want to tell you, the RCMP, our National Police Service, were actually formed right at the advent of alcohol and drug prohibition here in Canada. The original Northwest Mounted Police was disbanded in 1917 here in Canada, and the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, were formed as an anti-drug force designed to harass natives, designed to harass Chinese people, designed to harass people who are using cannabis, opium, cocaine, and alcohol. Vices usually of the poor and the working class and the dispossessed class and the immigrant classes. And since then they've been hell-bent on curtailing the rights and genuine human rights of all of us here in British Columbia. And here's a fascinating thing. Yesterday, to my delight, a study came out from the Centre of Addictions Research here in British Columbia that said a majority of British Columbians have smoked marijuana in their lifetime. 53% of this province has approximately 3.5 million people, 1.82 million people, they are conjecturing by a telephone survey of 13,000 British Columbians, determined that more than half this province has smoked pot. Now, more than half this province has smoked pot. More than 57% of British Columbians believe marijuana should be legalized here in British Columbia. So as the leader of the BC Marijuana Party, I'm heartened. People want marijuana to be legalized in the majority in this province. People in the majority have experienced marijuana, so they know what they're talking about. They know it's harmless. In fact, this study found as their number 3 thing that everybody who took this survey, who reported that marijuana should be legalized and that they had smoked marijuana, also believed, by and large, in the vast majority, that occasional regular cannabis use to be harm-free. So the people know it's good for you. The people know it's not harmful. But what does our police services, who, by the way, in this very moment are embroiled, like I say, from the top of the RCMP commissioner who's embroiled in sending a man to torture, to police forces all across this country where police are implicated in molestations, raping, sexual abuse, murder of suspects, tasering to death drug users, and an epidemic of law enforcement out of control, symptomatic of all these people in power out of control. But here's an example of what they're doing. While the majority of people in BC smoke pot, they agree pot should be legalized, they want to see pot taxed and regulated, the RCMP persists in this. Listen to this. This is in a community near a town called Chilliwack of Yarrow. Yarrow residents are vowing to take back their community after police busted 10 marijuana grow-ops this year. By the way, this wonderful study from the Centre of Addictions Research says that 25,500 people in British Columbia between 1997 and 2003, a 6-7 year period, were arrested for cultivation. 25,000 people in BC. That's fantastic. It's actually 3 times the national average. They arrest per capita 3 times more people in BC for growing pot. So the RCMP are rounding up people who are substantially supplying pot to the majority of the province, who agree it should be legal, who agree it should be smoked, and who agree that there's nothing wrong or harmful in it. But the RCMP are organizing these towns and creating this fascist police state where they ask the power companies to hand over all the power to the records to the police, where they get neighbors to spy on you. They've got this drug watch, this cannabis watch in this small town of Yarrow, and because they busted 10 grow-ups there, not that there was any harm ever attributed to these grow-ups, they just busted grow-ups, but now 50 of the town's 2,000 Reddits were at a forum on crime in the community, and they're saying things like, I want a safe place to grow up, said Arlene Underwater. I want us to be able to trust our neighbors, like as if pot growers aren't trustworthy or something. But anyway, this is the kind of dangers they're talking about, these vague, ethereal fear dangers that President Bush loves to have on everybody. It's all fear, we need to be afraid. There's no real, what danger is there in growing marijuana? What terrible things have happened in neighborhoods where people are growing marijuana. Accordingly, since 50% or more of the province is smoking marijuana at some point, and they believe it's legal, it's probably on every block. Every block in British Columbia is having pot growing there, smoking there, sold there, traded there, and given it. Most people, in fact, said they got most of their marijuana free from friends, so a lot of trafficking is going on between this 1.84 million British Columbians. Crime is going on in every block, and the RCMP, rather than deal with their own rapists and pedophiles and murderers and taser killers and outlaw cops, are terrorizing community after community like Yarrow, British Columbia, and getting people to form neighborhood watches, block watch, and now it's called the Grow Watch. They've got people walking door to door, looking in your windows for steamy windows and for power out of control and lights that are on, and the vague smell of plants, not forgetting, I guess they are forgetting, that this was an agricultural country when it was founded, and 60% of all Canadians grew plants for a living at the turn of the last century. And now, all of a sudden, the most sinful thing you can do in a community is to be a planter, a gardener, a grower. This pot watch is the first of its kind in BC. They actually use that, the pot watch, the grow watch. And so this is what the RCMP are doing. They're demonizing the majority community. They're demonizing the good people. They are out of control, a rogue element. The politicians of this province refuse to do anything about it. And so I'm just pointing out that we are being abused by the authorities in this province. I have certainly been abused by the police authorities in this province, and we need to write a lot of letters. We need to demand independent inquiries into the murders, the drug abuse, the police abuse of natives, the raping, the pedophilia that's going on with police in British Columbia, as everywhere where authorities are out of control. I urge you to take some action, and also read this study from the Centre for Addictions Research of BC to show the fantastic majority we really are. The great, wonderful thing is that people like me, like you, we are the majority in British Columbia, but we're silenced by a terrible media that is lapdog to the police, that only reports the police's side ever. Every time the police bust someone, it's always from the perspective of the police, even though that's illegitimate. It has no moral basis. It has no even real majority democratic rule basis. It's a fraud. The police are renegades terrorizing this province with their grow busters, with their organizing the people for grow watches, with all their laws that require power to be handed over, forfeiture of property, kids getting kicked out of school, enhancements being proposed for people who are dealing around schools, while the rest of us in British Columbia, the majority want it legal and taxed and regulated. The RCMP, the British Columbia Police Services, Vancouver Police are all out of control. I hope you'll do something. Write a letter. I'm glad to be talking to you once again, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.